Coming up on Network Africa, South Africa's President Jacob Zuma stays away from the funeral of anti-apartheid hero Ahmed Kathrada in compliance with the wishes of his family. The UN warns that cases of acute malnutrition are on the rise in Somalia as drought worsens. And the African Union Commission chairman visits famine-hit South Sudan, calls for more humanitarian action. Hello and welcome to Network Africa. I'm Temitope Fagbemi. We begin today's program in South Africa, where President Jacob Zuma did not attend the funeral of veteran anti-apartheid activist Ahmed Kathrada at the request of his family. Mr. Kathrada called on Mr. Zuma to resign last year after he became involved in a series of corruption scandals. The Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, represented the government at the funeral. 87-year-old Kathrada died yesterday. He was jailed alongside the late South African President Nelson Mandela for fighting against white minority rule. So let's get more on the story from Lebogang Chaka, the chairperson of the Thabo Mbeki Leadership Institute alumni. She joins us live from South Africa. You're welcome to the program, Lebonga.
Thank you for having me.
So what is the mood like in South Africa over Ahmed Kathrada's death and funeral?
The mood is quite somber in South Africa, but I think what I'm observing in the environment is that people are really just reflecting on Kathrada's legacy and just really what he stood for. And as a nation, we're standing back and saying, you know, how far have we come? You know, he was part of the Rivonia trialist, and we're now saying, what are we as a nation taking from his life and carrying forward? So it's somber, but people are also just reflecting as a nation.
So we understand President Zuma did not attend the funeral because Mr. Kathrada's family asked him to stay away. Do you know what could have prompted that request?
So, you know, that is one of those situations where, when I interpret it, I see it as a shining moment for our democracy, because we actually live in such a free country that a family feels comfortable to issue a request like that at the highest level, and the highest level office actually respects it. And South Africans have welcomed that, and the family has issued the statement knowing that there will not be any consequences for that. The presidency has still sent our deputy president to lead the delegation and has still granted Ahmed Kathrada an official funeral. So from my perspective, really, it just shows that as a country, our democracy is in place and that our citizens feel free to issue such a request to the highest office. And I think it is a shining example that we need to follow as a continent to say we should be free as citizens in our country.
As a young South African or as a young African, how do you intend to carry on Kathrada's legacy?
So Ahmed Kathrada and the Rivonia trialists, they stood up for the injustices of their time. I mean, Mr. Kathrada, even I've attended some of his lectures, I've met him, where he was still even receiving awards for him still standing against issues of racism in South Africa, you know. So he, from an early age, up until his death, was still standing up for the injustices that he saw of his time. And as a young South African, what I'm taking from that really is, I believe that one of the injustices of my time as a young South African, African in particular, is the xenophobic attacks that we've seen in our country. And as a result, I'm actually hosting a xenophobia dialogue where I've on this Saturday, as the chairperson of the Thabo Mbeki, alumni forum, we have invited people from different African countries. We have invited native South Africans so that we can really start a conversation and start healing some of what I see is happening in my country. So as a young African, I do take from Ahmed Kathrada, and I'm saying that, even if you're young, you can still stand up for the injustices of your time and say, you know what, this is not right. Let's see how to solve it.
Bogang Chaka, chairperson of the Thabo Mbeki Leadership Institute alumni, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa. Staying on in South Africa, Pravin Gordhan says he's still the finance minister in response to a question from reporters as they attended a court hearing he brought against the Gupta brothers. Gordhan flew back to South Africa early on Tuesday, obeying an abrupt recall by President Jacob Zuma from an investor roadshow abroad amid reports that he is about to be sacked.
The president is my boss, so if he asks us to come back, we must come back. Yesterday we met about 50 odd investors who buy our bonds, which means they buy our debt, and who have great faith in our economy. We also met the ratings agencies, two of them face-to-face and one through a teleconference, and gave them assurances about the economy.
I think the effect of the current Minister of Finance being sacked would be extremely serious for the country and for its economy as a whole, because it would be seen as a sign of the capture of the national treasury by forces that are closely aligned to the president, who are keen to get their hands on the funds in national treasury.